Okie dokie. We're going to get back into the elevator lobby panels that we've been working on here. Last time we had kind of got together on these, we did look through all the architecturals. We started making a list of questions that we had. We sent an email out to the project management team to see about getting some clarification on some items that we had some questions about. We did get a response back as of this afternoon. I have a drawing here, sort of an email response back. What we're going to do is we're going to go and read through what we had initially sent and then look through what our response was back from Rod here. So our initial questioning was about the P4 elevator lobby panels on 6434 Proscenium. And our question was really pertaining to whether or not we had panels on the south wall of the elevator lobby. It is pretty clear that we had wall panels on the east and the west because we had elevation views that did call those out. The north wall has a portal, which is going to be a part of the P3 drawing series, which we did discuss last time. And then the south wall is another portal, but we are also questioning if these two areas that I have with arrows pointing to them should also be veneer panels as well. That was pretty much what we had. Let's go to see what Rod had responded with. And it does say that we only have panels on the front. So with that being said, I would make the assumption here that there are no panels on the inside wall or the south wall of that elevator lobby, just with this information provided here. All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to go into AutoCAD and we're going to start working on an actual drawing. Now, last time we didn't really start one yet. We were just kind of doing our initial overview. And so what we need to do today is we need to open the template for that project. So we're going to switch our open to .dwt versus .dwg. We're going to go to the OSW drive and we're going to go locate the Proscenium job folder. Under drawings, we're going to go to the prelim project and find that template right here. We'll open that up here and we will go ahead and get started. So what we need to do here is we need to start filling out our title block. Always a good idea to jump on that right away so you don't forget. And then we're going to go ahead and save as the template so that way we're not overwriting any of the relevant information that we need for the drawing. Or, well, not for our drawing, but for other people that are also using the template for their drawings as well. So we don't want to overwrite this, but we're going to fill out what we can for right now and then save as. So first things first, let's start at the bottom and work our way up. So packet number here, we have packet number 46408. Sub number is always going to be right after that on your drafting list, which will be 003. That just stands for paneling. Description, here we're going to copy this right from our description column on our drafting schedule. That's going to read veneer panels. Second line down, it needs to read the location of where those veneer panels live in the building. So just like that. You can see that I'm also running into a little bit of a spacing issue here. So I'm going to either have to abbreviate or condense some of the information that's here. What I will probably do is see if I can go and write ext. Okay, so even that, I'm still not able to fully fit the full name and let's see, this was low-rise elevator lobby, right? Yep, okay. It looks like we'll be able to at least fit that in there, which is great. It's kind of snug, but it should work. What we're going to do then is go, well, actually that's, oh, and fill out the drawn by for our initials here. So let's go ahead and do that. JAF for my initials there. You will put yours in there right where that goes. Before we leave off and we save as, we're going to go ahead and relabel the first tab of our drawing to read P4.0. P4.0. All right, now let's save as. Make sure not to hit the save button. We're going to go to save as here. And we're going to save it as a .dwg in the, let's see, where are we going here? We need to go down to the Proscenium job folder under drawings, prelim project, and we need to save this here as a new drawing file. So P4, starting with your print reference, move on to your packet number, which is 46408. Then you're going to go over to your description, which you can just copy right out of here and paste it into your file here. Version 1.0, since this is the first edition of this drawing. And you can hit save right there, and we can then go ahead and begin. All right. So we're in our file now. We're going to start looking at what we can start with. A lot of times I will pick a view and start working my way around based off of that view. Sometimes it makes more sense to use your plan view. Other times it makes more sense to use your elevations or your sections, and that is all up to you what you'd like to start with. But at the end of the day, when you go ahead and draw each of those views, we also need to remember that we are going to be using construction lines to work our way around. So the first view you draw, you're going to use construction views to replicate the information from one view to the next. Super critical, making sure that everything lines up, everything's consistent, that you're not putting conflicting information on your print. So what we're going to do is we'll probably start with the plan view. A lot of times with elevator lobbies, there's a lot going on, and the plan view is going to be what kind of drives the rest of the drawing. And so with that being said, it's probably a good place for us to begin here. All right. So a couple things you can do. One, if the project has a floor plan CAD file, you can go ahead and snag that right out of the project folder. What I'll do is I'll go hunting for that real quick, and I'll show you where you can find that if there is one. First place you should look would be in your prelim project folder. If there is a floor plan there, it will be labeled floor plans ANT.dwg. It does not look like I have one here currently, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over to drawings, and we're going to make our way over to architectural. And then we're going to go into CAD drawings. Now, if there is a floor plan in here from the architect, you would definitely see that here. If you're just seeing a README file in an archive folder, that will just mean that there isn't one there. Now, if you ever run into a case like this, there's really not a huge concern, although yes, it does take more time to import the floor plan. It's not a major hurdle. So one thing that you can do, and I'll show you how to do this here, is you can import a PDF into AutoCAD. It does not come in exactly the cleanest, like the cleanest thing ever. It's still pretty close, but really when you're dealing with floor plans, usually the most ideal scenario would be to have a floor plan CAD file from the architect in order to work off of. But you can import those floor plans too, and we'll show you how to do that here. So before we begin, we want to locate which floor plan it is that we're trying to import. So we're going to go back to the architectural folder. We're going to find our elevator lobby, which you might think, oh, that's a no-brainer. It's on level 1, no big deal. Well, there is a chance that there could also be an enlarged view of each of those elevator lobbies, which in this case there is. So we're going to go and pull up A620. A620 is going to be an enlarged view of this room. And typically when you're dealing with enlarged plans, you're going to have more information to work with, and it's also going to be a lot more detail oriented compared to using an overall floor plan to import. So if you ever have the opportunity to work with an enlarged plan versus a floor plan, definitely use that one. Here we're going to start with page A620. So how you go about importing a drawing into AutoCAD is you want to start with a blank AutoCAD file. So I would highly suggest not starting in a template like we have here, although we will be using this to make our drawing later on. What we're going to do is we're going to go up to where it says new at the top. In the new icon, this submenu will pop up. And what I usually do is I'll go to DWT, And then what I usually do from there is I will locate the AutoCAD template folder. As you can see here, this is the file path you would take to get there. If you haven't modified any of your AutoCAD settings, this will automatically open anytime you select .dwt. But if you go to this template folder here, there is a file called acad.dwt. acad.dwt is a completely blank AutoCAD file with nothing in it whatsoever. There's nothing there, no layers typically, no blocks, no hatches, none of that stuff's there. And the reason why it's important that it's not there is because when you go to import something, you're going to, it will be a lot more sluggish if there is a bunch of other underlying things within that file. So the next step here, now that we're in that blank acad.dwt file, is we're going to type in PDF import. You'll see that show up right away. It's a red icon, and you're going to hit enter. At the bottom of your screen, you're going to see that there is an option for file. You're going to want to either hit F and hit enter, or select this icon here. Once you open that up, you're going to navigate to the project folder for Proscenium. And then you're going to want to locate the PDF that you're using for the enlarged floor plan, which here, again, that was page A620. All right. So A620, I've gone ahead and selected that file and hit OK. Now, as you can see here, I have very specific import settings already set for AutoCAD. If you want to pause the video here as you go to import this, it would be super helpful if you have all these settings already set on your end as well. Once you have these set, just like publishing a drawing, these settings are going to stay there until you either get a new computer or you potentially update AutoCAD, and it may or may not lose these settings. Usually it doesn't, but there's a chance that it could. So anyway, once you've selected all of these icons, whether you've checked them, unchecked them, but as long as they match what I have here, and you have the right PDF file, you can hit OK. And you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a loading bar down there. And that will signify how it's working through and pulling all the data from the PDF file. So as it does that, it does take probably about maybe 20-30 seconds for that to work. It's a lot faster than it used to be, but it's definitely made some progress here. It also depends on the quality of the print that you're importing as well. If there's a lot of things and a lot of layers and a lot of things happening inside of that AutoCAD, or sorry, inside of that PDF, AutoCAD will generally take a little bit longer to import that too. Moving forward, what we want to do now is we also want to clean this up. You can see my computer's a little bit laggy. I'm going to make sure I'm using 2D wireframe, which is a visual style. I will not really cover visual styles yet until we get into 3D topics, which will be our next step anyway. But yeah, on my acad.dwt, I accidentally had this set to conceptual, but you shouldn't have that issue. It's just an issue on my part here. All right, so what you're going to do then is you're going to actually remove, by highlighting and using your delete key, you want to remove anything that's not relevant to the drawing that you're working on currently. So really what we want, I'm going to leave the plan view and the RCP, or the reflected ceiling plan, here just for the time being. What we're going to do is we're going to hit select, select similar. Select similar is a command in AutoCAD that if you have something highlighted, it will detect other objects that are using the same properties as that item that you have selected. So it's a really fast way to remove things like hatches or different things that you don't want on this import. So that again is called select similar. It's just an AutoCAD command you can use to help you select things a lot quicker. And I'm going to try to remove any hatching that's on here. Hatching will definitely slow it down. as you go to bring this into your file, and you really don't want that anyway. So the last thing that we need to do is, and I will kind of go through this with you too, is anytime that you import an AutoCAD file, or sorry, import a PDF into an AutoCAD file, it is going to show up at the scale that the drawing is plotted at. And I'll say that again because it's really important. So when you are bringing in a PDF into AutoCAD, it is really important to make sure that you remember that when you import it, it will not come in at full scale as we're used to drawing. In fact, what's going to happen is it's going to come in at the scale that the drawing was originally plotted at. So it's super important, and I'll explain why in just a moment here. As we go through, I'm just cleaning up some extra things like these detail blow-ups that they have drawn here. Really, that's just kind of clutter. It doesn't really need to be there for what we need the drawing for, so I'm going to delete a lot of that. You're going to see that disappear. Let's see, anything else? We'll clean that up a bit. Clean this up a bit. All right. If you notice, I'm also leaving a lot of the dimensions in here. There's a reason for that, and I will kind of go through that. The next step, that after we're done cleaning up the AutoCAD file of this PDF, is going to be scaling the drawing to the correct scale. So we're going to take the original drawing that was drawn by the architect here in the PDF, and we're going to take this now and we're going to scale it to be full size. So there's two ways you can go about doing that. The first way is if your drawing has a dimension on it, you can utilize that dimension to scale your objects or your entire drawing to the correct scale. The other thing you can do too is if you have a scale, such as this here on your architectural drawing, an easy way to determine how to scale your drawing would be to take 12 and divide it by the decimal version of your scale fraction. So if I take 12 divided by 0.5, theoretically, I should have to scale the drawing 24 times the original size to make it full scale. Kind of a weird way to do it, but it does work. How we're going to do it is I'm going to use the method of approach of the first scale that we talked about. So we're going to use this dimension here to scale up our entire view to be the full scale version of what it should be. So starting with the scale command, type that in. It should show up right away, and you'll just hit enter on there. It's going to ask you to select objects. So what you're going to do is select everything that's here, hit enter, and then what you want to do is specify a base point. Now, because we are using what's going to be called a reference scale, the base point doesn't necessarily matter so much, especially because we're working in a blank AutoCAD file. But no matter where you select that base point, I'll show you if you select it out here, your drawing is going to move over to the left and up. If you wanted to scale it dead center for whatever reason, you could do like that shift mid between 2 points, and you could go like between the corner of your drawing up here to the corner of your drawing down here, and you would be able to scale it from the center of that area there. Now, again, the base point doesn't really matter for this step. You can select any point you'd like. I'm just going to select a blank point on space. And then what we're going to do is, if you notice at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there are a couple options down here within the scale command. We are going to be using reference or R. So if you hit R and enter, or you click on reference here, it will open up a submenu which asks you to specify a reference length. So for us to do that, what you usually want to do is select 2 points on a dimension here to be able to scale that. So I'm going to select this corner here, and then I'm going to select my second point, which would be this corner here. All right, and as you can see, it's trying to scale my view, but before I even click or hit enter or do anything else, if I pay attention to what's happening in the command prompt at the bottom, it says specify new length. And that new length should be what that dimension reads. So the dimension we selected here between that point and that point was 5'3". That would be 63 inches there. All right, and then if you want to double check the dimensioning here to make sure that we're on track, we're going to go from here to here, and we should see a dimension of, oh, it's slightly different than what it reads, but should be 23 inches there. So that's a little bit weird. This one here should be at 3'6", which would be 42 inches. So we're a little bit off on that as well. So it just kind of proves that like the best way to really import a drawing is really going to end up being just pulling from the PDF. That one was perfectly 63, or sorry, pulling from the AutoCAD file if you have one, because you will end up with some goofiness like this, which we'll clean it up here. And I'll show you how you can do that. All right. So because I know there's some issues going on here, I want to fix those as much as possible. So my first dimension, we'll start at the top. This should be 5'8", meaning it should be 68 inches in total. Right now, what I'm getting here is 68.2366. So 68.2366. All right. And if you take off the 68, that leaves you with 0.2366. So that means that we have to shrink these panels here, that dimension, to make this work. So how I'm going to do that, I kind of did that out of habit, but we're going to use the stretch command to do this. And then we are going to highlight from this corner on the bottom right, click your mouse, and then move your cursor up to the top left, just like this. We're going to click our cursor again. And because we know we need to shrink this area here, 0.2366, what we're going to do is hit enter and then specify base point, which can be anywhere again, just like the scale command. And you can see what I'm doing is I'm shrinking that. I need to shrink it at a very specific dimension, so 0.2366. All right. Let's go ahead and continue checking this side of the drawing first, and then we will get back to the side on the right. So right now this should be at a total of 42 inches. Right now we're showing 41.8123 minus 42. All right, so this should be, we need to add on 0.1877 to this dimension in order for that to work. So we're going to use the stretch command again. And again, starting at the bottom right, working our way up just like this to the top left, and we're going to hit enter and specify that this needs to be 0.1877 inches larger. We'll double check to make sure we did that correctly, and we did, 42 inches. So currently we're at, let me make sure I had that right, 68 there, and oh man, okay, we're a little off again. Okay, so let me check one more thing. So sorry about that. It's not off by much, but I still want it to be correct. So we're gonna make sure that we do that. So 41.9996. Okay. So we need to literally increase this by 0.0004. Not much, but enough that it bugs me. So 0.0004. Now let's check it one more time. See what we've got. Perfect, 42 inches. All right, so this next one should be 63 because we're at 5'3". And this one's a little off, so we're going to adjust that just a tiny bit. So 629598 minus 63. So 0.0402 increase on that one. 0.0402. All right. All right. So moving on to the next one. Yep, perfect. This should be 3'6", so we should be at 42 again. We're at 41.8199. Or sorry, 8119. My apologies. So that needs to increase by 0.1881. Okay, we're working our way through. We're almost there. And there's 63, which actually is right, because that's one we used to scale the drawing to start with. And then we have another 42 here, which again, this one's pretty close to what we just did. So 42 minus 41.8128. So we need to increase this elevator lobby door by 0.1872. All right, moving on. Next one here is 2'8". So we should be at 32, but we have a little bit overage here, so we're going to fix that. 32.1034. So really we just need to remove the 0.1034 to make that correct. Point 1034. And then we have this dimension of 1'11". So that should be 23 inches, but we're showing 23.5275. And we'll just remove the 5275, or sorry, 52. Let me make sure I had that right. 5257, sorry. We're going to remove that from this, or no, sorry, not remove it. Yeah, actually, sorry, remove it from there. Yep, there we go. Okay, just double check. I'll make sure that we're right on that. 23 inches. Okay, so this left-hand side should be set to go. We are golden there. Let's just verify this side as well on the right and make sure that we're dealing with the correct dimensions here. Okay, so this one's a little off as well, but we also need to make sure that we are matching what's going on the other side of the elevator lobby. So in a perfect world, because this portal is 23 inches, that would mean that the portal over here needs to line up with that. So what I'm going to do is actually use the construction line method to just verify to make sure that these are, in fact, where they need to be. I can see at the top, it's like it's a slightly bit off, and at the bottom, it's a slightly bit off as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to fix that using the stretch command again, from bottom left to top right, or sorry, bottom right to top left. We're going to do that. We're going to stretch the elevator lobby portal to match up with the portal on the other side of the room. And as you notice, as I'm doing this, I'm deselecting this line because this line needs to stay where it is. That is the, should be the face of the elevator lobby jamb from the other side of the room. I don't know if that fixed this entirely. We're going to check it one more time to be sure. Let's see, how do we want to do that? Actually, you know what? As long as this is lined up with what's going on over there, then we should be golden. So I'm going to leave that alone. The next dimension here is 2'8". And currently we are at 31.9967. We should be at 32. So we need to add on 0.0033 to that dimension there. So let's go ahead and do that here. Okay, so now it gets to be a tiny bit more tricky. You can see I don't want to select any of that because I don't want to stretch that by mistake. So I'm kind of using my stretch command very selectively here to make sure that everything is matching up to where it should be. This one should read, what is that, 3'5". So 41. But I think that's a typo. That has to be, because the rest of the elevator jams are 3'6". So, and it's actually dimensioning very close to 3'6". So there has to be a typo there. Really, that should read 42 inches. Right now we're showing 41.9976. So we're going to take that and subtract out the 42 that we want to get 0.0024. So we need to add that to these elevator lobby doors to get the correct dimension here. 0.0024. Moving on, we have a dimension of 5'3", so 63. Looks like we show it at 62.9978. So 0.0022. I feel like I had that just show up a minute ago. .0022. All right, moving on up. Next up here should be another 42 because we're at 3'6". We're very close. We're at 41.9985. So that needs to increase by 0.0015. Next one here should be 11'4", which would be 136. But it looks like we're a little bit over according to this dimension here. We are 7424 over, or 0.7424 over what we need to be. 0.7424. Yep. Okay. Interesting. So we're going to remove that 0.7424 from here by shrinking that down. Just double check to make sure I got that correct because that was an oddball one. Yep, 136. The last one here should read 36, but again, this is a portal that lines up with the portal over here. So we want to make sure that these do, in fact, line up with each other. Looks like they are slightly off, which is kind of goofy, but make sure these are lined up too. Has me wondering here. Yeah, those are pretty lined up. Okay. So I guess theoretically, like this one does need to change just ever so slightly. I'll take it out of these panels here because we're going to verify those panels in field and make sure that they are correct to the size that they need to be to. So I'll just bring that up to there and we'll roll with that. Oops, hold on. Let me just verify this is 36. I think I need to change that still. 2516. Okay, we've got it pretty well lined up now at this point. So sorry about the delay on that. I know usually if you have the CAD file from the architect, it does speed things up a little bit. But in this case now, at least we're 100% sure that everything's lined up to the dimensions provided. So now what we can do is we can remove these dimensions here. They're not going to be needed any longer. So all that can go away, including these dimensions as well. It's a little bit of a time-consuming process to remove all those from your drawing. Once you've done that, though, go ahead and highlight the entirety of the print. And we're going to go up to our layers up here. You can see right now it says PDF2 geometry, which is a oddball sort of layer, and we're not going to use that. What I'm going to do is put everything on layer 0. And then I'm going to go into my properties over here. I'm going to change the line color to by layer, the line type to by layer, line type scale to 1, line thickness to by layer, etc. So everything should be set to by layer pretty much. And we're going to copy all of this out and paste it into our CAD file here. Now that we have that, we've put it on layer 0, we've moved it into here, pasted it in. What we can do now is we can highlight everything there and put it on the existing layer, because all of this should be existing lines. And I'm going to take these lines and I'm going to line them up just like we've always done. We're going to make sure that they line up to our grid, just like that. So everything should be nice and snug to the bottom left corner of that plan view area there. Once you've done that, then you are pretty much set to start drawing your panels in. Let's see, how are we doing on time? We're at 34 minutes. That's not too bad. Let's go ahead and see about getting this plan view going here. Okay, so let's see if we can find any details of these panels here. We've got our elevation views on the left and right, or the east and west portions of the plan view. It looks like on either side of these elevator jambs, there's most likely going to be a trim piece there, or at least a gap between the panels and where the elevator starts and stops. So let's see if we can dig up any information that would relate to that. Um, Sometimes you can find that either on the plan view. Most likely you would see a section call out here. I'm not really seeing one right now, so we may need to find out for sure what is going on with that. Hmm. It kind of looks like the elevator, like the panels might just be tight to the elevator, which, I mean, in a perfect world, that would be fine. But because we know that site conditions are always different, what we'll most likely end up doing is we'll usually put a reveal here between that metal and our panels, and we're going to do that here too. Um, they did a pretty decent job of drawing in where they want the panels to go. Um, so kind of my thoughts on this is I would assume that this here is the drywall layer of the wall. It's not clearly defined, but drywall is going to be dimensioned at 0.625. And this is very close to 0.625 for the dimension of the depth on that. So my take on that, and that's most likely your panel there, my take on that is that we probably have a little bit of cleaning up to do. But I would almost assume that is probably the drywall there. Okay. All right. Interesting, interesting. Okay. So assuming that, man, that's pretty cluttered, the way that they have it drawn there. I'm not sure I really like that. The exit's kind of all over the place. We may have to end up using this plan view as a reference and draw our own, which, I mean, will take a little bit more time to do, but we might have to do that. They're giving us dimensions here, which appear to, I pull some strings off of that. Looks like they go right to the inside of the metal for the elevator jamb. So what I mean that is that we got this little strip of metal that sits right here. Our panels sit right behind that. So if we start with one elevator lobby, or sorry, one elevator and work our way around, yeah, there's no dimensions there either. So what we're gonna do is utilize the dimensions that we do know what we have. So looks like our panel should stop there, and then there should be drywall on this side according to Rod's email. Then what we have here is we have a dimension that goes from the face of the drywall to the inside face of that metal. So we also need to find out, one, what the thickness of the metal is, and how far back our panels sit from the front of that metal lip on the outside of the elevator. So what we're going to do is we're going to change our scale here to match the scale of the architect's drawing. If there was a detail of this, I would pull it up, but I'm not really seeing one, so I'm going to try to scale some of this and see what we come up with. Okay, so it looks like, sorry, that was showing a 1/2 inch there, but it keeps showing up as 9/16. So what we're going to assume is that the panel sits a 1/2 inch back from the front of the metal channel that's sticking out in front of the elevator door. This metal channel will be by others, so we're not going to worry about drawing it by us, but we will show it still in the drawing. Looks like it's a 1/4 inch thick and it sticks out a 1/2 inch from the face of our panels here. Okay, and then if we were to measure it from the wall to the start of the panels, that's 1 foot, 1.5. So let's go ahead and draw that in, and we'll work our way around the elevator lobby with that method of approach. So this will be 13.5 wide by 0.25 thick. All right, and then we know for a fact between the two metal pieces, we are showing a gap of 3'6". And just to be sure, let's go ahead and make sure that we're measuring from the inside of the metal. So when we do that, we're going to take a line straight up from the edge of the metal, 42 inches. So just like this. We're going to copy that metal up to here, just like that. And we should be left with a gap between of 42 inches there. All right, cool. All right, now something that we also need to do is we need to draw in our panels. So assuming that our panels are going to be mounted using our standard panel cleats, that would mean that between the panel and the drywall, we need at least 1 inch of space. Again, referring back to when we talked about panel design, construction, and the hardware used to mount panels, that 1 inch is for our panel cleat itself, which is a form of French cleat. And then it also includes a small bit of shim space between between the cleat and the wall. So what we're going to do is we are going to kind of sketch in the panels without a reveal for the start. We're going to add that reveal in later. And again, that reveal would go between the metal and the panel. So right now we're not going to worry about it, but we do know we need to add that later. So if I'm looking at the elevator lobby and I'm pretending that I just drew this door here, that's what I'm looking at. And I'm going to draw in some panels right here, this 2'8" dimension, which I got to remember that goes from the inside of the metal to the wall, not the outside of the metal to the wall. So when I draw that in, I'm going to go from there down at 2'8", which is 32 inches down from there. And we also need to remember that we are dealing with a 1/2 inch step back from here, which we did find that just by scaling the drawings. Not the most ideal approach, but sometimes you have to do that. So now I've got a line straight down at that 2'8". Well, 2'8" minus the 1/4 inch for the steel. And I also have this set back a 1/2 inch. So what I'm going to do next is draw in our first panel. So I'm using the rectangle command, starting with the grip point of the corner there. And when you have this turned on, your DYN mode set to 3, you'll see those 2 dimension boxes around that rectangle. What you're going to do is first start with the thickness here. Right now it's showing 0.0. Repeating, what we're going to do is type in 0.75 for the thickness of the panel. Hit the tab key, which will activate the secondary dimension for the length. You're going to select that point there. And then you'll say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't a 1/2 inch step back. So what you want to do is use your move command to properly place that panel where it needs to go. And then I'm going to delete that extra line that's sitting below because I don't need that anymore. All right, let's move up to the panel above. This one is 5'3", but again, that's 5'3" minus a 1/4 inch minus a 1/4 inch. So we're dealing with 5'2.5". Okay, couple things you can do. We know the panel is 5'2.5" here, so we're going to take this panel from below, bring it up to there, and we know that it'll be 5'2.5", so it'll be 62.5 inches long. All right, so now we need to increase the panel width here to match, just like that. And then a really quick way to get that elevator lobby array drawn up here, now that I have that panel drawn, is I can use the mirror command. Using the mirror command, if I use the center point of this panel, or the midpoint, what I can then do is mirror that up to there. And because my elevator doors are all exactly the same width, that means that that doesn't change. And as long as I am butted to the panel here, butted to the panel there, then we are all set to go. Let's move on to the next set of panels. This one is 5'3" as well, just like the one we just did. So what that means is that I can then take the elevator lobby doors and the 5'3" panel and use a base point that's common between the panels above and the panels here. That base point, what I'm going to use here is going to be this corner here of the metal elevator jamb. So the top corner there. We are going to paste that right here. And so now we are up to here. This is where we're at currently. All right. Now, let's take a look and make sure there's a veneer panel here too. I don't know if there is. I just need to take a look at the side elevation of the wall. Actually, it does appear that there is one there. That's kind of cool. So there's no drywall exposed. It'll all be veneer paneling. All right. So what we need to do is figure out what that will be. We're given a dimension of 5'8" here. And that's, again, to the inside of this metal like this, to the outside of the wall over here. So we know 5'8" would be that dimension. We also know that the portals on P3 appear to be 36 inches or 3 feet wide. So when we do the math here, we should be dealing with a panel of 2'8" because we're going to subtract off the 3 feet. So 2'8" from here to there. So we need to draw in that panel now. And it's actually conveniently the same as the panel below, so we can probably just use this panel that we already drew using the copy command and a common base point like this. We can click that base point and paste it up here like that. So theoretically, we got about half of the elevator lobby drawn now. I mean, that's, again, theory because we do have to add in the elevator doors and a couple other details that we don't currently show, like the walls behind the panels, etc. So, yep. So if you do notice, one other thing that's very common between the two sides of the elevator lobby is that these are all matching dimensions from one side to the other. That'll help us with getting this drawn up because that means that we can mirror everything from one side of the elevator to the other until you get to these panels here. These panels here are a little bit longer. There's actually an electrical room behind here, and there's no elevator in between this one and the wall here. So this will vary slightly from the last panels we did on the left, but we can still mirror everything over and then work our way through what it would take to draw these panels in. We'll just have to modify this part of it when we get to it. So before I can mirror this, I need to know what the middle between these two sets of panels would be. So one thing you can do is look for any sort of dimensions that show up. It looks like we have a dimension of 10'2" right here, which could be useful. We may actually end up using that. Yeah, let's go for that. We'll go 10'2" for that, and we'll go measuring from the inside of that panel to the inside of this panel here, just to see what we end up with. So 10'2" should be 122. And again, measuring from that corner of that panel to the corner of my invisible panel here. What I'm going to do now is use the mirror command. And I'm going to highlight all my panels and door jambs over here. Using the midpoint between those two, I'm going to mirror those over to there. All right. Now, I can probably just delete that line. It probably won't be necessary for right now. We can get rid of that. So you start to see the elevator lobby start to take shape now at this point. So not too shabby. It's coming together. Let's go ahead and draw in the elevator. Let's see, do I want to do the walls next or the elevator doors? kind of feel like doing the walls next because it should be the next easiest thing. And then we'll get into the elevator jambs and doors from there. All right, so the walls. We're going to take a look at what the wall thickness is, and then we're going to do our best to draw that in so that way we're matching what's going on in the architecturals to what we have on our print here. Um, well, actually, what we could probably do for now is let's go ahead and draw a line right at the back of our paneling like this. Let's take that line and we're going to move it 1 inch back because as we mentioned before, we need that 1 inch of space for the cleats and for the shim to sit behind the panels. That is going to occur everywhere on these jambs. So now what I'm going to do is trim these lines around. See, just like that. So I'm giving myself that nice gap that I need. And I'm going to do the same throughout. So it's kind of a repetitive process. I'm just drawing a line at the back of my panel using the move command, moving it over 1 inch towards the wall side. And this will denote where the drywall will start. My apologies as well, because as I'm doing this drawing, I've realized there's been a couple of hiccups there with some information that I would rather see coming from the architect, but you don't always get every little bit of information. So you do have to improvise on some things. And, you know, part of that would be what we talked about, where we tried to import the floor plan, but then weren't too successful at that. So we ended up redrawing the floor plan as we have it here. Other things like, you know, just goofiness, like stuff like dimensions that appear to be either rounded or they're just not quite to where they need to be. So we're going to work with the dimensions we're given. So there's a couple things that I've noticed as I've been going through and I'm trying to kind of piece it together as we go. Other things like the reveals. I mean, typically an architect isn't going to show you where every single panel reveal needs to go. That's something that we have to determine ourselves most of the time anyway. So that's not really a shocker there. But what I'm doing here, you can see, is I'm highlighting anything that's not part of on-site scope, which includes the metal jambs and the walls. And then I'm going to put all of these items on the existing layer to represent that they will not be a part of our scope, but they are there and they will be interacting with the scope of items that we have on our plate. Okay, we'll keep going a little bit more here. So we've got the setback for the walls. We're going to draw in the elevator doors next, and also the elevator jambs. And when I say the jambs, I mean, I know that I've been referring to these metal sheets as the elevator jambs, but that's just a decorative piece. The actual jamb would sit back here. It's a metal track, and it's usually about 2 inches wide at the front face. Now, these ones are buried, like as in they're covered up where you can't see them, but we still should draw them to show that they're going to be there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pull some dimensions off of this. So that's looking like it's about 2 inches at that face, 6 inches at that face. So let's start by drawing a 2x6 rectangle here for that. All right, next step here is locating this jamb. So as you can see what I just did, I just moved it right there. And if you look at their drawing, they have it lined up with the back edge of that metal casing or metal jamb piece that's decorative there. So that's placed where it needs to be. Again, this will be on the existing layer because it's not part of our scope. In fact, will be part of the elevator provider scope. All right. So from there, then what we need to do is we need to draw in the elevator doors. Elevator doors, usually are set back a little bit from that jamb. You can see there's a small gap right there. It's probably about a 1/4 inch. Exactly perfect. Okay, 1/4 inch. The doors look like they are 1.25 inches. And they protrude past the metal about 1 inch. So we got to remember those 3 things. The door is 1.25 inches thick. It sticks out 1 inch past the jamb, and it's a 1/4 inch set back from the jamb. All right, we are going to start by drawing in the door snug to the decorative jamb here. So again, 42 inches, 1.25 inches thick. We know that it's a 1/4 inch from the face of that, so let's bring that 0.25 back. And then we need to increase this by 1 inch on either side, just like this. And then we are going to put that on the existing layer and throw a divider line right in the middle to represent where the 2 doors would unfold, or not unfold, but roll out from each other. Okay, so that kind of represents the doors and the actual jamb that sits below, or sorry, behind the metal. See, Cody? We're going to take those lines and we're going to copy these. Just like this. Oh, and again, one thing I forgot to do, we should probably take care of this now, is that these panels on this side do extend from this elevator jamb to where they would extend on this wall here. So really this jamb goes away. These panels do extend up to there. And then that leaves that large set of panels that we're seeing right there. All right. You gotta do a couple more things. We gotta mirror the elevator doors across the room and the jamb across the room to over here. And I'm going to use the shift right click method with mid between 2 points to get my middle mirror line here. So what you're going to do is take a endpoint here, a endpoint here, and mirror that just across like that. Not a big deal. All right, so we'll keep going a little bit more. We will be adding in these P3 panels, although they won't be a part of this drawing, but we are going to need to show that they do exist there. I'm trying to think what the next step should be for us in this case. If we go ahead and maybe we'll draw these walls in here. So we know we have a wall that extends from the side of our panel out to here. I don't see that there's a dimension on it specifically. And maybe they just kind of forgot to add one for that. So what we'll do is we'll try to scale that too and see what we can come up with. What most likely I will be using to scale that is I'm going to probably actually pull a measurement from the corner of the drywall there to the corner of the drywall here and see what that leaves us with. So roughly about 7'7". Okay, so if that is true, and I go mid between 2 points, I go from that corner to that corner, and I'm going to draw a line at 7'7". 7 times 12 plus 7 would be about 91 inches there. So we'll go 91. I'm going to use the move command, grab that midpoint, snap it to that endpoint where we did the mid between 2 points. And this represents the opening between the walls here. So right now, that is a temporary line. It's not going to live there permanently. It's just there to show what that opening is where the drywall stops and the new jamb starts right there. Take those lines from there to there, those lines from there to there. We'll delete that line now because it doesn't need to be there anymore. And we're going to take these 2 lines and we're going to put them on the existing layer again. That'll be representing that will be a drywall partition right there. Now, one other thing that we want to show too is that we have a 1'11" offset from there to where the wall stops on the hallway side outside the elevator lobby. That is 23 inches, so we'll go offset 23. just like that. And I'm going to connect those dots just like so. Okay. Since we've got that now, that does a pretty good job of detailing out this little portion of the elevator lobby. We do need to get back to working on, well, let's pull up this. Okay, we're about an hour here. I think I'm going to pause this one and keep going on the next one, but just to break it up, the next one here will be finishing up the plan view. And then once we have the plan view done, we're going to use that plan view to then go through and make our elevation views following that. And then it may bleed into another video, but in the next one after that, we'll be dealing with section views for these panels and some detail views as well. But the next one, I would fully expect us to be able to complete the plan view of the elevator lobby and probably get the majority of the way through the elevation views. Not sure we'll get through them completely, but we will give it a shot and see where we end up with. So I'll pause it here. We'll come back in just a moment and we will continue on with this mission here.